Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. You go up to the left, you go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. All right, guys. Today's date, October 11th, 2023, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, of course, on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the news and try to make sense of it all. Before we do get started, guys, to let you know that we are a news podcast, which means that we do try to find news from sources that are credible with award-winning journalism, not sensational news like Fox News or whatever it's extreme left or extreme right or whatever news segment that Jada Pinkett Smith is on. We just don't devolve into that mess. We do try to maintain professionalism, although words do fly sometimes. And there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, we might as well start with the fly in the room because, everybody's talking about it. And I do mean everybody. And I actually have some points I want to bring up about this, but let's go into America's number one profiteering system, war.
Americans from coast to coast are making their voices heard about the Israel-Hamas war. Rallies are taking place in cities across the country with the polarizing issue prompting increased security in the affected communities.
Federal and local law enforcement are on alert, they say, for potential anti-Semitic attacks on U.S. soil amid the threat of violence and possible lone wolf attacks. Joining us now, NBC News investigative correspondent Tom Winter, who digs into all of this for us, covers law enforcement very, very much for NBC. I want to ask about New York State first, because I think that's the largest Jewish community outside of Israel here in New York. What are some of the increased security measures that you're seeing here?
Sure. So on a regular basis, if everything was calm in the Middle East, there are NYPD patrols at synagogues. There's a police presence, private security, not just in New York City at various houses of Jewish worship, but all across the general tri-state area because of the size of that population, as you mentioned, Kate. So the NYPD says, look, we've beefed up those patrols. We've beefed up our visible presence, their intelligence gathering presence. They've done that as well. And they've also looked at, is there anything that we need to be concerned about as far as threats to Islamic institutions as well? People kind of attacking those based on what Hamas has done overseas.
I mean, and to that end, right, the potential for threats. The president has said Homeland Security and the FBI are coordinating with local and state authorities. What's being done at the national level?
Right. So they talk about this idea that there are no specific or credible threats. And then I think people hear that and they think about, well, what about the Tree of Life attack that happened at the synagogue? What about all the anti-Semitic rhetoric that we see day in and day out, combined with this violent terrorist attack by Hamas? How can you say that? They're being specific that they haven't seen any threats, any direction from overseas for people to conduct attacks here in the United States because of what Hamas did. So that's what they're speaking about there. But of course, open any social media platform. People are talking about this. The rhetoric is very heated and it's very concerning. And that's what the FBI and these large state law enforcement agencies are focused on.
So what's crazy is, guys, and I know it's the Middle East. Yes, Hamas and Israel. There's just something about the Middle East, and I hate to keep bringing this up because it is a war. It is a war that's gone on for as long as I can remember being in school, being taught about the Middle East. That between it used to be Israelites and Palestinians, now it's Hamas. I mean, the whole idea with the Middle East is it's always in turmoil. However, I've also sat there and said that because the U.S. picked a side in all of this, and not only picked a side, but continues to fund Israel from a military strategic standpoint, that just adds more fuel to the fire. And again, I get it because, despite where you come from or who you are, you shouldn't be discriminated upon. You shouldn't be discriminated against, especially for those with Jewish faith. Of course, those of black people understand that more than anybody else. But again, it's amazing to me, not only the level of just protection that's given, because In the same sense, yes, this was an attack on foreign soil. Yes, there may or may not be American hostages held by Hamas. Yes, I get there and say that because of our association with Israel and the fact that we're funding this country annually, mind you, at the same time, the protection level that's given almost makes me wonder, why don't black people get the same thing? And I don't mean to be that guy, but I can't help as a black person think about that for a second. We've had multiple killings that have been either unjustified or lack thereof in this country. And yet other groups of people seem to get more done in a matter of hours, if not days, than for us. Keep in mind, guys, we just got around to making lynching a federal hate crime. Whereas I could talk about the beginning of COVID-19, where a certain failed president may have sat there and said that Chinese people were responsible for COVID-19, which led to the assault of those of Chinese American descent that basically got assaulted for no reason. And yet there was a COVID hate bill that was done in a matter of days. I'm not knocking it. Again, I keep saying the fact of the matter is the only way the Middle East will actually have peace in the Middle East is the fact that the U.S. should have done to Israel what they did to Afghanistan. Simply pulled out. But because they have a military base there, it's a strategic area in that region, they're going to sit there and say we must stand behind Israel. Because again, for the United States, since its inception, for only 15 years, out of us as America as a nation, 15 years is the longest time America has gone without being in a theater of war, without being in a war themselves, but just knowing peace. 15 years. That's saying something right there. Aside from the fact that, war is profit. And if anything has proven that, the last two wars we've been a part of, and the war now that we're going to be in now with Israel, and the war that we're still in with Ukraine going against Russia. Oh, let's not forget, we're still in other places still causing skirmishes. War, for some odd reason, when it comes to the military-industrial complex and it comes to the American government, is profiteering. And yet, I just wonder for 1 second what happens if we did pull out Israel. Israel's on its own against Israel is on its own against Hamas. Let the cards fall where they may. At least then we can sit there and really need to focus on ourselves, because now we're basically being what everybody thought we were, a warmongering country that has no problem because, again, there's war and profit. But at the same time, Republicans, especially presidential candidates, have no problem blaming the current regime for something that's been happening pretty much since Eisenhower.
Quick to condemn the attack on Israel and to blame President Biden.
The Israeli attack was made because we are perceived as being weak and ineffective and with a really weak leader.
The Iranians are funding Hamas and Hezbollah and all these groups, and they're funding it in part with money that they've gotten because of the Biden administration's weak policies.
This is what happens when you have a president like Joe Biden. I also believe this is what happens when you have leaders in the Republican Party that are signaling retreat on the world stage.
Joining me now is Mr. Trump's former United Nations ambassador, Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley. Ambassador Haley, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks so much, Kristen.
Well, I want to start off, Ambassador, by getting your reaction to the horrific events that unfolded in Israel yesterday. To what extent do you see this as a major intelligence failure?
Well, I think that there will be a time and place to deal with whether it was an intelligence failure. I think right now what I want the American people to know is just imagine the Israeli people woke up to seeing their own citizens dragged in the streets, the elderly, children, women taken as hostages, whole families murdered. And so now today, the Israeli people and the country are having to face the fact that their loved ones are being deployed, that they are having to go to the front lines to defend their country, that businesses are having to be shuttered because their workers are leaving to go defend the country, and because they've had a massive terrorist attack. And so I think that prayers for determination and strength for the Israeli people. But what I want the American people to know is what happened when they were dragging those people in the streets. What happened when they were murdering innocent Israelis? The Hamas and the backers who support them, the Iranian regime, were chanting death to Israel, death to America. That's what we have to remember. We are united with Israel because we are united because both Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the Iranian backers, they hate us. And we have to remember that what happened to Israel could happen here in America. And I hope that we all unite and stand with Israel because they really need us right now.
Quick follow-up there, Ambassador. Does that mean that you are concerned about potential attacks on the home front in the wake of what we saw in Israel?
I have been concerned. I have been terribly worried about the fact that Iran has said the easiest way to get into America is through the southern border. We have an open border. People are coming through. They're not being vetted. We don't need to wait for another 9/11. You also look at the fact that, Kristen, America is incredibly distracted and incredibly divided. And when America's distracted, the world is less safe. And look at what happened to Israel. They waited for them to be distracted. And that's when your enemies move in. America needs to wake up. We need to put this negativity and division behind us. And we need to focus on national security for ourselves and for our friends and start thinking about what it's going to take to get America strong again.
I want to drill down with you on some of those divisions. Yesterday, almost all of your Republican rivals blamed the Biden administration for this attack, as I just discussed with the secretary, citing the deal they made with Iran. You just saw the Secretary of State effectively say there is no link between that deal and the horrific attacks that unfolded yesterday. Do you think it was irresponsible of your rivals to level that allegation without any evidence or proof?
I actually think it was irresponsible for Secretary Blinken to say that the $6 billion doesn't weigh in here. I mean, let's be honest with the American people and understand that Hamas knows and Iran knows they're moving money around as we speak because they know $6 billion is going to be released. That's the reality. When I was at the United Nations, you saw that when those planes full of cash sent by Obama to Iran, I went to the International Atomic Energy Agency. I met with them. What happened was those funds were sent to Hezbollah in Lebanon. They were sent to Hamas in Gaza. They were sent to the Houthis in Yemen. They go and spread terrorism every time they get a dollar. It doesn't go to the Iranian people. It does go to terrorist attacks. And Secretary Blinken's just wrong to imply that this money is not being moved around as we speak
and yet,
to
Ambassador,
hurt those that love freedom.
And yet, Ambassador, there's just no proof of that yet. This is just the hours after that immediate attack. Is it irresponsible to level that charge when you really don't have any evidence of that at this point in time?
The evidence is, look at what the Iranian people have done to freedom-loving people around the world. Look at what the Iranian people, the Iranian regime has done to threaten Israel over the years. To think that they're not moving money around is irresponsible to say that to the American people. They are moving money around to threaten those they hate. They hate Israel. They hate America. They are going to continue to use this. It was wrong to release the $6 billion, but let me tell you what else was wrong. It was wrong to go and have that debacle in Afghanistan. It was wrong to waive sanctions on Iran that gave them even more money. Money has been flowing to Iran, and that is the problem, because when Iran gets money, they use it for hate.
And Ambassador Haley, just to be clear again, the Secretary of State said categorically they have not seen a link. Let me move on, though, to your record on Israel. Under the Trump administration, the U.S. Embassy moved to Jerusalem. As you know, that enraged many Palestinians. Settlements expanded in violation of international law, and there was no progress made toward a two-state solution. You were UN ambassador at the time. Could you and should you have done more to address the interests of the Palestinian people?
Well, I actually went to the West Bank. I actually met with the Palestinians multiple times. I actually went and saw what the situation was at hand. But let me tell you what else I saw. I saw tunnels underneath Israel underneath schools. What they would do in those tunnels is they would store arms, they would store ammunition, they would store things so that they could go and take that ammunition to hurt people across the border. They put these tunnels underneath schools because they knew that Israelis valued life. They knew that Israelis would not go and hurt innocent people. That's what we're dealing with. So I've been in those tunnels. I've seen what has happened. I've seen the graffiti all over those buildings that have tried to say that they want to kill as many Israelis
But Ambassador,
and Jews as they can.
did you
I
bear
saw the hate up
responsibility
close.
to do more to try to move toward a two-state solution while you had the chance to do so?
I called out the truth. I called out the truth that what was happening was that you had the entire world condemning a freedom-loving country that is a bright spot in a tough neighborhood. And the other truth I'll tell you, Kristen, is Americans need to remember it's not that Israel needs America. America needs Israel. Israel is the front line of defense for the Iranian regime and terrorists that want to hurt us and want to hurt our friends. And we need to be honest with the American people about
Ambassador
that.
Haley, I want to turn to former President Trump's comments recently suggesting that outgoing Joint Chiefs Chairman General Mark Milley should be executed for treason. Do you believe those comments in and of themselves mark a threat to the United States national security? Are they disqualifying?
I just think it's irresponsible. I mean, you don't need to say things like that. I think that any man or woman that has served our country deserves the highest respect. My husband is a combat veteran. He is deployed right now. They sacrifice a lot. Their families sacrifice a lot, and we should honor them every chance that we get.
Finally, your message to Republicans in Congress who right now do not have a speaker in the House who are in a state of paralysis. Do you worry that makes the U.S. look weak on the world stage?
I would remind Republicans, don't chase Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. We need to come together. We need to focus on national security. We need to focus on the fact that, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, that crime is at unprecedented levels, that our children are lacking in reading and math, that we have an open border, and that China's preparing for war with us. We need to get united. We need to focus on the issues that are facing us, and we need to do that.
I'm sorry. I thank you. I really do thank you guys for hanging in that long, because, forgive my lack of better words, that was some bullshit. Nikki Haley, that's not her real name, presidential candidate for 2024, can't answer a single question. And this is, guys, what I'm talking about. Can't answer a single question. Bringing up Obama. Well, when Obama flew those planes of cash to the Iranian people, they didn't do what they were saying they were going to do. They passed out the terrorists. Do you have any proof of this? Well, no. Look what they did. Look what they've done with it. So that's a no. Oh, but we know when you were ambassador, and Trump was basically taking the current deal that Israel and Palestinians had, and he pretty much took a dump on it. You were the ambassador at the time. What did you do? Oh, I looked around. I saw the tunnels of stockpiles of weapons that the Israelite people had to defend themselves with. I mean, I saw that. Okay. Do you think you bear some type of responsibility? I mean, concerning the fact this was stemmed from the mess that you guys created? I mean, it's just be honest. Be honest, Nikki Haley. It's not your real name. Be honest. You didn't do spit. You failed as an ambassador. You're failing as a politician, and now you're swinging for the fences, trying to be the first female presidential candidate on a Republican ticket, outside of Sarah Palin. But do we really count that? But that's what I'm saying, guys. This is the Republican two-step. That, let's not forget, Trump did crap all over this. And I can't stop stressing that enough. He crapped all over this. This is just the after effects of everything that's happened. So, the point I'm making out of all this is, again, when it comes to the military issue, they have to. There has to be a level of, how can I put this ever so nicely, accountability. The Republicans don't have it. They're so quick to blame Biden and his policies. Well, they were weak on Iran. Well, if you think about it, President Obama kept Iran from building a nuclear weapon twice. So I can't say they're soft on anything. However, Republicans seem to have this case of amnesia when they're in power, that they've done nothing wrong. But they can remember everything a Democrat has done wrong, or at least in their eyes. But again, this is why I sit and say, I was like, just the more I think about that, 15 years that our nation has had without a theater of war or military engagement. 15 years. That's saying something. And it's saying that we are profiteering. We are war profiteers. And those of the PMCs and those of the military industrial complex are going to have a field day with this one. Because again, we find ourselves in multiple theater of wars. And we have Nikki Haley and those who believe that the Israelite people need freedom, which in my mind, Team America World Police just starts playing in my head. America, fuck yeah. I mean, you see what I'm talking about. But the thing about it is, guys, war itself is ugly, it is bloody, it is disgusting. But what's more messed up about it is those that have the ability to stop it really point fingers instead of like accountability. And again, it's going to be one of those ugliest things, because I keep on saying when it comes to the Middle East, unless the U.S. decides to pull out, which may or may not happen, it's going to continue, unfortunately. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts around it. It'll just continue, and that's messed up. But speaking of Republicans being messed up, as we talked about last week, Kevin McCarthy pretty much got ousted as the speaker, and it came down between two people, Scalise and Jim Jordan. Guess who the Republicans decide to side with?
In the House today to determine a new speaker, and the GOP's nomination for speaker has gone to Steve Scalise, the Republican congressman from Louisiana, winning the GOP's nomination for speaker on a secret ballot that is, per multiple sources, in the House of Representatives. A major win, but not a guaranteed path to the speakership. He still needs a majority of the entire chamber to replace Kevin McCarthy, the ousted speaker who was removed by the House last week. Let's get you to Capitol Hill right now. I believe we have CNN's Manu Raju in place. Manu, this is a big win for Congressman Scalise.
Yeah, no question about it. This victory coming barely clearing the majority threshold that he needed to be nominated as Speaker of the House. That majority threshold was at 111 Republican votes. He got 113 votes. The vote was 113 to 99, defeating House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, who had the support of former President Donald Trump, had the support of a lot of conservatives, including the ones who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. But this vote to elevate Steve Scalise, who is currently the House Majority Leader, the number two under the Speaker, to the speakership, essentially is a sign that he has some work to do, because of the fact that in order to be elected as the House Speaker, you need to have 217 votes on the House floor. And at the moment, as you can see, a long ways from getting that. In fact, there was a debate inside the conference this morning about whether the person to be nominated as Speaker should have to clear that 217 vote threshold behind closed doors in the conference meeting. Scalise's supporters defeated that motion. Jordan's team tried to push for that motion, believing that could help him get elected to the speakership. Now the work is cut out for Scalise, who has to try to avoid the same fate as Kevin McCarthy, who in January went through 15 rounds on the House floor to get the requisite number of votes to be elected speaker. Can he do that? That is one of the big questions that he will have to deal with here. A number of members voted present because they didn't like their choices. They had concerns about some of the answers that these two men gave. Others were with Jim Jordan, and Jordan himself has not said that he would vote for Scalise. I asked him that question going into this conference meeting. He said, I will get behind whoever can get 217 votes. Well, Scalise did not get 217 votes. If Jordan does not get behind Scalise, that could lead to a messy fight.
And he's right. it will lead to something else. Steve Scalise, you're wondering why between him and Jim Jordan, it is literally like you have poison, you have acid. Take your pick. Because Steve Scalise, for all those that don't remember, he compared himself to being David Duke without the baggage. David Duke, the former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, who in my mind is still a racist and a dick. This man, who is wanting to be in the most number 2 position, and in all government wants to be the number 2 position, is pretty much comparing himself to David Duke, who just out of a secret ballot among the Republican Party won his nomination. Now, what does that mean? That means that a full vote has to go for the House, and if it does go through, then yes, he is confirmed as Speaker of the House. But it seems like, again, what I used to talk about Republicans, how I used to sit there and say that they were all on board with things. Not so much now, because Jim Jordan, a man who literally should be facing sexual allegations, that's a whole other story, may or may not support this. Which again, are we going to have another Kevin McCarthy situation? For all those that don't remember, in the early part of this year, Kevin McCarthy's name had to be brought up 15 times for him to be nominated as Speaker. And even then, MAGA Republicans made a deal with him and saying, we will back you only in the event that, number 1, you force Biden to cut his budget. Number 2, that you will try to impeach Biden because they tried to impeach Trump twice. And number 3, you will go after the DOJ for the weaponization that they did against Trump when they did their search and seizure at Mar-a-Lago. That was their conditions. He agreed. And keep in mind, the man McCarthy was kind of in a hard spot. Either you can let the government shut down and have the American people pissed at you, or you could, which again, a lot of MAGA Republicans was really just willing to the government be shut down, which again would have been disastrous for American citizens, not for government people, because government people still get paid regardless. That tells you everything you want to know. But McCarthy had a hell of a decision. You could either listen to those people you made a deal with and let the government shut down, or you can make a deal with Biden for a temporary stop measure gap to kick the can down the road. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. So that's where McCarthy is on the outside now. So it's amazing to see what Scalise or Jordan will do. Again, this is kind of being like a WWE storyline right now. You don't know who's going to go with what. You don't know what's going to happen in that chamber. All we know is that they do have to nominate a new Speaker of the House, and it falls upon the Republicans. And if you ever talk to a Republican, these are the same people that sit there and swear up and down they know better than Democrats. Really? You can't even get your own house in order. That alone screams everything you want to know. But we will follow that because, again, the sooner they can get a Speaker of the House, the sooner the other bills can be put in before this session reaches holiday break. Which, again, tells you everything you want to know. People getting paid $150,000 a year for simply doing nothing. Shocking, isn't it? Want to cover this as well because Biden announced new action slashing junk fees. He wants to empower the FTC to go after those to eliminate junk fees. He believes that Americans are getting screwed. Forgive my language. No shit, Mr. President. We are getting screwed. What he means by junk fees, guys, he means, again, this is a wide definition. He's talking about where if a bank charges you for simple basic checking, a bank charge, you get fees for checking on your balance. You get fees for hotels. If you ever went through resorts like Las Vegas, California, or even to the Caribbean, things of that nature, where you got charged ridiculous resort fees, things of that nature. Now, the reason why I point that out, because junk fees can be a broad determination of a lot of things. For example, if you're renting an apartment or renting a home, that you have to pay an application fee, that you have to pay a processing fee. In some cases, you have to pay for the credit check background to be done on you. Those, in my mind, are junk fees as well, although he didn't say specifically what the definition of a junk fee is, which I think is going to be a legal loophole somewhere. Now, don't get me wrong. Do I think junk fees need to go away? Absolutely. I mean, I'm the same guy that thinks that a bank should not charge an overdraft fee for money that you don't have. I'll be honest with you. I think banks have been getting over on folks like that. I think banks have been getting over on folks for overdraft fees for years. And the fact of the matter is that, the FTC or the Credit Bureau Group, they're just, the CF, the Credit Protection Bureau, is simply not empowered enough to tell these banks, you can't do that. Or tell these apartment leasing groups that own these apartments, you can't do that. Because Americans are getting screwed everywhere. And for the simple fact of the matter, it would be great to have all that down. But this is why I start and say it's going to be a little bit of a struggle because, again, you're going to have those with junk fees. They're going to be sitting there going, wait a minute, this doesn't count as junk fee. And you'll have those that will argue back saying, well, this is how we keep costs down. We try to, this is how we keep our profits up. They're not going to say that, but they're going to say we're going to try to keep our costs down. That's the problem. Now, again, we'll follow that as it goes along because, going through the House and going through the Senate, you got a better chance of it passing the Senate than you do going through the House. Then again, he also has a better chance of erasing student loan debt, but we'll cover that a little bit down the road. But guys, we need a refresher for a second. Remember this guy, George Santos? You mean the guy that lied just about everything that he's done? And I mean everything. The simple fact of the matter is this man got elected, even though everything that he talked about was BS. But at the time, Kevin McCarthy couldn't take an L. He couldn't. Kevin McCarthy could not simply take an L because, again, his vote mattered in the extremely tight margin they have of control in the House. Well, when we last left Mr. Representative George Santos, he was basically facing federal indictments on multiple charges. He has actually sat there and said, and I quote, that I will fight all 23 charges and will run for re-election next year. Who the hell does he think he is, Donald Trump? The level of indictments against this man, 23 let's not talk about the fact that he took a GoFundMe that was supposed to be used for a veteran, used it for himself, lied about where he went to school, which was false, lied about his financials. It's to the point to where I have to ask this question, why is it? And again, I point this out to McCarthy because at the time, McCarthy was Speaker of the House. He could have brought the fact of having Santos expunged from the House. He could have done the same thing to Marjorie Taylor Greene. He could have done the same thing to Matt Gaetz. He could have done that and moved forward, but at the time decided not to because, again, Santos is a vote. Santos is still an elected official. He needs him as a vote. But as of right now, Santos may actually be in prison faster than Trump will be, even though he sat there and said, well, I didn't do anything wrong. These charges against me are false. Again, who the hell does he think he is, Donald Trump? But we'll follow that story as it goes along just because, number one, it's entertaining. At the same time, we know he's going to probably see he's probably going to be watching the presidential election. He's probably going to be watching the next midterm election in jail. We already know that. But move right along, guys. This is the thing I thought I did not have on my bingo card. What I mean by that is, remember when the earlier part of the year we talked about the fact that parents were trying to sit there and have a bigger say in schools what their children are learning, even more so that some parents, of course, Moms for Liberty, decided to take a little bit further and ban books from libraries because they were deemed sexual or deemed witchcraft or all these other things, even though these authors they banned were people of color and LGBTQ plus variety. Well, Alabama may have won this week. Alabama's public library system had flagged a children's book as sexually explicit because the author's last name is gay. I cannot make this up. The book is called Read Me a Story, Stella by Mary Louise Gay. Because the author's last name was gay, it was immediately flagged. And it is amazing to me. Immediately flagged because of the author's name. Has nothing to do with the book. And I mean nothing to do with the book. because the book was literally about a child reading. That is it. But it is amazing to me that it just goes to show you there are some people that really should not be in areas trying to prevent others from learning. Now, I will say this at the time because I'm a parent myself. If there are certain things out there you don't want your child learning about, reading about, or just overall don't want to be involved in, you have your right as a parent to do so for your child. What you don't have the right to do is decide it for others as if you are this uppity moral character that just knows better. Be a parent to your own child. For the rest of us, leave us the hell alone. Because I'm going to be honest with you guys, when it comes to this whole thing about banning books, and I say it all the time, I say it on other podcasts as well. I say to kids, read the books they don't want you to read. Because again, they're trying, because when you're reading a book, number one, you're expanding your thought process. You're expanding your imagination. You're expanding your learning. Regardless of the book, you're expanding your learning. The fact that they don't want you reading a book like To Kill a Mockingbird. Well, the book's racist. Yes, that's the whole point of the book. They don't want you to read a book like Fahrenheit 451. Oh, we mean these people are burning down books out of fear? Yeah, amazing how relative it is to today's society. Don't want you reading that book. I guarantee they don't want you reading the book The Diary of Anne Frank. I guarantee they want you reading the book Flowers in the Attic, Catcher in the Rye, of Mice and Men, The Grapes of Wrath. I guarantee they don't want you to read those books. But let there be a chicken soup for the teenage soul, they will push that shit like it was the best thing smoking. Why? Because they don't want to admit that a lot of these people out there that are banning these books are really extremely twistedly religious. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with being religious, but at the same time, when you're pushing it upon those that do not believe as you, you're being a bit of a dick. And because these parents have sat there and decided, oh, well, we can go to the school system and we can decide this, tells me volumes about the fact that you don't want to trust teachers because you were basically fed BS from other areas saying that they're trying to indoctrinate your kids. And I can go into a whole other situation in a whole other another school system that has true indoctrination. But they're attacking education. They don't want kids to think. They don't want kids to be critical, logical processors. They don't want kids to see outside the box. They don't want kids to see and question things because they don't look right or they can be better. They don't want them to do that because you know why? When you have those who are critical thinkers, when you have those that just simply do not follow instructions, you know what you have? People that are aware, people that are paying attention, even more so, people that are not going to vote for dumb shit. Only simply put, I'm putting that out there, guys. Because if you look at an Alabama school system flagged a book because the author's name is gay, tells you it has nothing to do with the books themselves. It has everything to do with the fact that they don't like that the world around them is changing, and because of that, they feel left behind or insulted, because that's what happens when you get told the truth. The truth, as the great Patrice O'Neal used to say, is like medicine. It's not supposed to taste good. It's supposed to make you feel better. But I digress. Move right along, guys. Again, I cover this because until someone explains this to me, or until things get done, I keep pointing this out. I just talked about the fact of Israel and Hamas having a war, and that now Jewish people at home may be targets again. That security is being beefed up at synagogues, places of worship, and that the people that are out and about are on high alert from one war. All I can say is Black people have been getting killed by police. Where is our protection? For example, this man right here that you're seeing, and forgive me if I mispronounce the name, Presley Easy, again, was simply leaving a convenience store. And again, this is the story that we're being told, is that as he was leaving a convenience store, he may or may have not paid for the alcoholic drink that he took. Of course, the gas station attendant called the police, explained the robbery. Officers then came upon the scene and then decided to subdue Mr. Presley. Mr. Presley, again, during the scuffle, got on top of the officers, trying to reach for a taser, but it was secured and not rounded. At the same time, another officer from behind shot Mr. Presley, and he was dead at the scene. So again, I point this out, guys. That's the story that we received. That, keep in mind, that there may have been a chance that he walked out with a beer he did not pay for. The fact that he was basically scuffling an officer who was trying to detain him, and another officer had sat there and said, you know what? Nah, let me just go ahead and end it. Pulled his gun and shot him at point blank range. Try explaining that. Because right now, that case still being looked at. Police body cam video footage has not been released. Although there is witness cell footage out there. But here's the thing that I keep pointing out to folks. That, again, is how in the world, and I say how, because when it comes to these type of things, there needs to be explanation. And I might have overspoken because I think I might have found something. So let's see. Now, of course, as you can obviously tell, they're not going to show the shot, but that was the cell phone footage that was actually shot. But again, when it comes to the officer's footage, has yet to be seen. Again, I have to point this out that number one, why does the officer? I mean, here's the thing, I got to point this out, just because why in the world, when it comes to black people, do officers immediately go for force? Because again, the gas station attendant called and said, "Hey, the man stole a beer without paying." How much are beers in gas stations? What, $4, $5, $6? Depending on the can and what you get. But still, is $6 really worth pulling the strap out on a black man? At the same time, you have, and again, if you're coming from behind the person, right? He's on top of the officer. You have all the non-lethal things you can do. You could have maced the guy. You could have overpowered him. There was two of you and one of him. But at the same time, during the scuffle, you decide to pull your gun and shoot. Where I would love to see the justification. I would love to see the justification in that. Even more so, similar to that, I'd love to see justification in this as well.
We're at the DeKalb County Law Office of the firm hired by Johnny Hallman's family, who praised APD for firing the officer in the case, but also wants him charged criminally.
But this is not all that we're looking for. We want justice.
Johnny Hallman had called police to the scene in August when the car he was driving had a collision. Police on the scene cited Hallman for causing the accident. But when Hallman declined to sign the citation, police say Officer Kieran Kimbrough used a taser on the motorist, sending him into cardiac arrest, according to an autopsy. Now, APD has fired Kimbrough, saying Officer Kimbrough violated standard operating procedure when he failed to have a supervisor on the scene prior to proceeding with the physical arrest after Mr. Hallman failed to sign the citation.
Are you kidding me? Because he didn't have a supervisor on the scene?
Attorney Harold Spence was incredulous over the cause given for Kimbrough's termination.
Why wasn't there some mention of the leg sweep that took this deacon to the ground? Why wasn't there some mention of the brutalizing that he took, the physical brutalizing that he took at the hands of this officer?
APD said it could not release body cam footage of the incident because the investigation is ongoing. They also released Kimbrough's personnel file, which indicated that he had a clean record at APD for the 2.5 years that he worked here up until August.
So again, you have a guy who called the police because there was a wreck. The police officer cited said man. Said man didn't agree. So the police officer decided to use a taser, which eventually led to this man's death. I'm really trying to understand this here, because they didn't go out. The officer wasn't fired for what he did. The officer was fired because he did not have a supervisor on the scene with him. So let's forget the fact that he tased a black man to death, but at the same time, because the supervisor wasn't there, the reason why he doesn't have a job. I can understand why that lawyer said what he said, because how in the world do you explain that? Except for the fact that I have been saying this, and I hate to say it's going on 2 years, it's open season when it comes to black folks with law enforcement. Because again, we can sit here, I can stand and say, well, what about the George Floyd police reform bill? Had Uncle Tom Tim Scott decide to really help with the bill and made that law, would that change anything? To an extent, maybe. Here's what'll change everything. And I keep on saying this, and I have to give Killer Mike the credit for this. In all things, if you want something to change, you have to attack the money. And that police pension, attack that. And I keep saying, and I will keep saying, you really want to know how to stop these cop shootings, things of that nature, attach that police pension to pay out the victims every time a cop messes up. It comes out of the pension fund. The city doesn't have to worry about it. We're not paying for someone else's suffering. It's coming out of that out of the police pension fund. I guarantee you, if it was connected to that, the amount of shootings, holdups, things of that nature would drop. Because again, I find it amazing that when one event happens to anybody else but black people, there's immediate things we putting in place. But when it comes to black people and law enforcement gets the benefit of the doubt, while black people immediately get accused and made up for before we're even cold on the ground. Don't believe me? There's another one. I got plenty. This is just the third one. Imagine the fact that you got shot because you don't know who's coming to repo your car. The repo man is doing what repo dudes. They wait for early days, early mornings. They come out and hook your car off and they take off. Whereas in this case, the gentleman here may or may not have pointed a weapon at said tow truck repo person. Repo person gets away, calls the cops, says the guy's a gun, and of course, you hear the cop basically do what we always know they do in situations that come with black folks: give a warning, and then somehow within a split second decide to fire.
This video caught on a neighbor's doorbell camera captures the moment the Perkins family says police fatally shot 39-year-old Steve Perkins.
Police, go back!
The warning appearing to come immediately before police open fire, killing the husband and father.
There's one male down. I got to need an ambulance ASAP.
Authorities have yet to verify the video shared by the family's attorney to NBC News. The deadly confrontation around 2 a.m. September 29th stemmed from a tow truck driver trying to repossess Perkins' truck. Police say the driver arrived earlier, but left when Perkins flashed a gun, then came back hours later, accompanied by Decatur police.
They started firing before they even got the full first command out of their mouth.
The department states Perkins brandished the weapon towards an officer, causing the officer to fire. Perkins' older brother, Nicholas, in heartbroken disbelief.
When you watch that video, what do you see?
I see a murder. Cold-blooded murder.
Questions over Perkins' death prompted week-long protests and calls for transparency after his family's attorney says Perkins had no idea it was police in his front yard.
It doesn't matter whether he had a weapon or not. He never was given an opportunity to comply. And if he had a weapon, he had was well within his rights to carry a firearm.
The city's placed one officer on leave and has not released police body camera video from the incident. Alabama's law enforcement agency is now leading a third-party investigation.
And what hurts most is we don't have any answers. This family needs answers. This community needs answers.
And again, this is the one thing I keep pointing out, that in this case, well, he had a gun. Well, you know, most folks sit there and like, well, he had a gun, he aimed it at officers. Again, you not hear the officer's command? He literally says police, and then bam, 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 bam. Who the hell can react to that? Nobody. Because they already came in hot and heavy because of what they heard. Instead of assessing the situation, they went in there and said, oh, well, there's a threat. We have to eliminate it. 3 stories that I just did. And I see the same thing. We could again wait for justice, but at the same time, I said the only way you're going to get justice is you have to hit them where it hurts. Not the fact of losing a job, because an officer, as long as he didn't do anything bad, he can leave one state and go work in another state, no problem, because there's not a national registry. There is not a national registry of these cops with heinous actions to prevent them from being hired somewhere else in law enforcement in another state. There's no registry for that. So in theory, they could go work somewhere else. But at the same time, attach the pension to when payouts need to happen to their victims stops overnight. I will guarantee it will. But again, shouldn't be surprised until things change. That's why I keep telling you guys to get informed, to get involved. I could sit there and say cooperate with the police, but some days it's like, it's really fuck the police. It really is. Because I can go on that whole rant about it is easier to be a law enforcement officer than it is to be a nail technician, to work in construction, electrician, things of that nature, because they all take longer. 6 weeks, from 6 weeks to 6 months as a police officer, and you're out there protecting and serving. And you're being taught everything wrong in a profession where there needs to be perfection, not sloppiness. But hey, I digress. Moving along, Trump may not like what his CFO had to say in court, but then again, he's the guy that was also caught embezzling for Trump at the time, and well, not boding well for Trump's Manhattan case.
Former President Donald Trump's apartment in Trump Tower is nearly a third smaller than what he claims, according to documents presented in his civil fraud trial in New York. Yesterday, prosecutors revealed a document signed by Trump in 1994 that certified his triplex just shy of 11,000 square feet. But in 2012, Trump listed the apartment at 30,000 square feet. Former Trump Organization CFO Alan Weiselberg also acknowledged the initial smaller size of the apartment is correct. The state attorney general is accusing Trump of inflating his assets, including his properties, in order to defraud lenders.
And why are we surprised? This is good, pretty good and bad when your former CFO says, "Oh yeah, we cooked the books." Not looking good for Trump right now, especially the sense of the matter is he is already, as we've said many times in this podcast, facing multiple lawsuits and court cases and indictments. Technically, if you're an attorney for Trump right now, you've had Christmas 5 times over at this point. Your kids and their kids are safely college paid for. Their college tuition is paid for off this man, if he paid them. But let's be honest, lawyers are probably the only people Donald Trump will pay because they're the reason they keep his ass out of jail. Not sure about this time, though, but we'll see. But going back to the strikes, guys, I cannot help but keep saying this. But yes, the writer strike is over. The actor strike is still going on. The VFX artist strike is actually going on. Kaiser Permanente, which we also talk about. United Auto Workers, which we'll also talk about. But now there's a new strike. Mack truck employees are now going on strike because the contract they received was an insult. So 4,000 of them currently are now on strike. And what were the demands that you asked? Simply put, more pay better working conditions, bigger benefits, and more in the profit sharing. It is amazing to me that whenever it comes to these strikes, they're all basic. We want more pay. We want better benefits. We want A, B, and C. And you know the thing about it is, whenever it comes to these strikes, none of it is unreasonable. None of it. Seriously and truly, none of it's unreasonable. No one's asking for an exorbitantly high amount of wage increase. Nobody is asking for beyond stupid. What I mean by that is beyond the normal things that you think you would be getting with benefits. Like, people want better healthcare. We all want better healthcare. People want profit sharing. For companies that are making billion-dollar profits, yes, you can share and still make a profit. But the biggest things, though, I've ever seen these strikes all seem to be the same. But it is amazing to me that you have companies out there that, well, decide that, F y'all. That's what corporations are saying right now. Pretty much, F y'all. But Mack Trucks, considering the fact that they actually do make up a quarter of the rigs that are on the road, don't think you want to tick off that group. In the same sense that the UAV, as we're about to go to, has reported progress, but still on strike.
All right, welcome back. Breaking news just moments ago, the head of the United Auto Workers Union announcing progress in talks with GM, saying the strike is working, but they're not there quite yet. NBC News correspondent Jesse Hirsch is in Streetboro, Ohio, with the latest details on this. Walk us through. I know we just heard from Shawn Fain. Give us the details of what we know and how much longer this may last.
Yeah, Yasmin. So as for how much longer this may last, don't have an answer for you there. And that is obviously part of the union's core strategy, is keeping everyone guessing about where they may or may not move next. But what I can tell you is, at least for the time being, the UAW has not expanded its strike. So this is the first week since the strike began. So week by week, we have seen the strike expand twice now. There was the initial strike, then they expanded against GM and Stellantis, then they expanded against Ford and GM. In each of those two expansions, the company that was left out was said to have made progress, according to the union. Well, this time around, the union did not announce any new strike expansion. So that is a point of significance. The other thing that stood out is what the union says came from GM just before the union's president spoke a short time ago. Here's part of what Shawn Fain had to say about what General Motors is apparently giving into now.
We were about to shut down GM's largest moneymaker in Arlington, Texas. The company knew those members were ready to walk immediately. And just that threat has provided a transformative win. GM has now agreed in writing to place their electric battery manufacturing under our National Master Agreement.
Yasmin, there are two things I want to point out there about electric vehicle batteries. So EVs are seen as the future of this industry. They are also something that has been a point of concern and contention throughout negotiations, because there's the possibility that electric vehicles will require fewer workers to make them. So that, in theory, would mean fewer jobs. So that is something that is a point of concern for people. And the other thing that is interesting about what GM has apparently agreed to at this point is that a week ago, when Ford went from being given an exemption on further striking to being included in a strike expansion, the CEO of Ford said that he believed the union was holding up a deal largely over electric vehicle battery plants for that company. So you have to wonder what Ford is now thinking, that they are seeing that the union is saying that GM has agreed to something, according to the union, that is on a similar topic. So that's something we're definitely going to be looking for closely. We have reached out to General Motors for clarification, for confirmation on this, but have not yet received a statement. We do, though, know that we are expecting something from the General Motors team. So obviously we'll put that out there as soon as we have it. But this is something that gets to the heart of the long-term concerns for workers and for this industry as this industry moves toward an electric vehicle future. So this is something that could potentially be really pivotal and groundbreaking.
So in other words, they're panicking. I do like the fact that they keep on saying, well, they're halting the strike. Well, they are halting the strike because the simple fact of the matter is, folks, those those CEOs of those big three are starting to see what happens, or starting to really, instead of them saying, you need us, no, we need you, no, you need us, especially for these plants, which again, which we did talk about, GM did secure a $6 billion loan because of the lack of production that they're receiving right now. So Ford, Stellantis, again, they did halt the strikes, which either means that either they're making progress or that they've done enough to get their attention. Either way, unions work. I cannot stress this enough because, guys, like I said before, if it wasn't for unions, you wouldn't have a 40-hour work week. You wouldn't have sick pay. You wouldn't have PTO. All these things that you enjoy at your current job are not because your employer gave them to you. It's because unions fought for them. There's a big ass difference. Also with Kaiser Permanente, again, one of the larger healthcare sites are still striking. California, Colorado, Oregon, Virginia, and Washington. 5 states are currently on strike. And I told you guys, this started off as a 3-day strike. 3-day strike was nearly 4 days ago. I told you this was going to wind up happening. And Kaiser Permanente, much like Ford, much like GM, much like Stellantis, much like those that have come before them, simply put, all this can be avoided if you just pay people a living wage. That's it. Pay people a living wage, and that's freaking it. You will be effing surprised. Effing surprised at what people will do for you if they don't have to worry about trying to make ends meet with multiple jobs or working long hours. If you simply pay them to sustain themselves. Like the UAW president said, we don't want to be millionaires, but we don't want to be working ourselves to death while the rich get richer. That's all we're saying. But again, we will follow up on each of those 3 strikes as they happen. But again, as we sit here, how the Frack got here, we are definitely pro-union. So again, stay strong and stay in it. So last one we got, guys, is that Biden is doing a victory lap on student debt relief. And again, don't really think you should be, considering the fact of, well, you didn't really deliver what we thought you would.
I announced a major proposal for student debt relief. We're on the verge of providing more than 40 million Americans with real relief from their student debt. The money was literally about to go out the door, but Republican elected officials and special interests stepped up and sued us. The Supreme Court sided with them, snatching from the hands of millions of Americans thousands of dollars in debt and student debt relief that was about to change their lives. As I said at the time, I believe the court's decision to strike down my student debt relief program was wrong, but I promised I wouldn't give up. Since then, my administration has been pursuing a new approach, grounded and under a different law, the Higher Education Act. This act allows the Secretary of Education to compromise, waive, or release loans under certain circumstances. Last week, the Department of Education took a critical step in this process by identifying specific challenges that borrowers face in the current system, so we can move forward with a new rule to address these changes. For example, there are many borrowers who have made payments for many years, but because of interest, they still owe more than they originally borrowed. My administration is doing everything it can to deliver student debt relief to as many as we can, as fast as we can. This is in contrast to House Republicans who helped block the previous debt relief plan, nearly shut down the government over the extreme demands, which would have hurt hardworking families. But they had no problem with the Paycheck Protection Program. Remember that? The PPP program during the last several years, which was designed to help business owners who lost money, which was legitimate, because of the pandemic. Members of Congress got over hundreds of thousands of dollars because their businesses lost money. That wasn't it was a worthy program. Let's be clear. Some of the same elected Republicans or members of Congress who were strongly opposed to giving relief to students got hundreds of thousands of dollars in relief for themselves to keep their businesses open. Several members of Congress got over $1 million. and all those loans were forgiven. The hypocrisy of this I find stunning. I supported that program, and I support the student debt program. My administration will continue to use every tool at our disposal to help ease the burden of student debt so more Americans can be free to achieve their dreams. It's good for our economy.
Okay, so he had me up until a certain point where, again, what he's talking about, guys, is that if you are on an income repayment plan, number one, they're backed up. That's the reason why he's talking about that. That's one of them. Where, again, if you're on an income repayment plan, after 10 years of payment, your loan is supposed to be automatically forgiven. It is backed up on the paperwork because there's plenty of people on that plan that have yet to be forgiven that are still paying. The other thing that he's talking about, aside from the fact of he is currently going toward for-profit schools and pretty much wiping out student loan debts that way, because some of these for-profit schools were scams, they were misleading people, so therefore their debts got forgiven. I think University of Phoenix was the most recent one that he's done to a certain extent. But I will give him this, though. He does still have the public service loan for forgiveness program, which again is for those that work in the public, whether you're teachers, contractors, things of that nature. I get it. But he even sat there and said that the other side of it all, that Republicans had no problem with PPP loans being forgiven by celebrities, by top companies, even by those in Congress themselves. Republicans had no problem with it. Joe Manchin couldn't say a word. Kristen Sinema could nowhere be found. But the moment Joe says we need to forgive student loan debt, why? Oh, the squawking. Why? They made this decision. Why do we have to pay it? And I wish, and Mr. President, if you ever walk up on this podcast, hear the sound of my voice. You did great in pointing out the hypocrisy the Republicans had when it came to the PPP loans. I wish you would take it one step further and say, if we can forgive PPP loans, if we can allow these rich people, these corporations, your fellow politicians to be forgiven of PPP loans, then we can forgive student debt loan in entirety. I will argue on that field all day. Student loan debt needs to be wiped out because, as I will say before, I'll say it again. When it comes to student loan debt to ratio, it turns people from getting a home, getting a car, even getting a job, because jobs do check your credit too. At the same time, it'll dismay people. You may spend the better part of your life paying off student loans, only paying off the interest again, ignoring the principal. The fact that banks are still allowed to talk to 18-year-olds, because I know a lot of people argue, well, 18 is an adult. Here's the thing I've learned, being 18 once and then, learning as I got older. When you're 18, you're not really aware of how these student loans work, except the fact that you can use this to go to college. And that at the time was the big advertisement. If you want a good career, you got to go to college. You got to get a degree. You got to get a degree. You got to get a degree. That degree gets you the job that you want. And then that job will pay you so well that the student loan thing won't be an issue. Here's the problem with all those people that did get those degrees. The jobs weren't there. They simply were not there. So they got saddled with debt. At the same time, it is, and I will argue this all day, it is predatory lending how these banks operate with student loans. It really, truly is. And the fact that, aside from that and taxes, they stick with you until either A, you can pay them off, or B, they outlive you. And that alone is no way to live. But President Biden, I wish on everything you sat there and really pushed hard to wipe out student debts in entirety. Oh, but we can't pay for it. We were able to pay for 2 wars for the last 2 decades. Yes, we can pay for it. We turned around and forgave PPP loans to multiple companies, businesses, and people. I think, and at the same time, those same PPP loans that are being forgiven are being for us to pay back to the government. Which again, I wish Biden would have said that. I wish Biden would have sat there and said the truth. That all those PPP loans that are being forgiven, that you guys are paying for them. I wish on everything, I wish he said that. Because context and information is key if you want to grab voters. And Biden's going to have a little bit of a difficulty just because he could have sat there the entire time and really and truly made a difference in that speech. He still is. I mean, he is wiping out some student debt. But at this point, for a knockout shot to ensure that you get the company to not only get the Democratic nomination, but Daniel win the presidency. Because I said this in the last presidential election. All Biden has to sit there and say is two things. He can sit there and say, I want to protect women's rights and I want to wipe out student loan debt. Instant landslide. Because how many voters have student loans? And how many of those would love to have student loans wiped out their credit reports? I'm just saying. But anyway, we're going to move on to our Feel Good segment because usually have the Frack guy here. We usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes makes use faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday. It's hump day. Tomorrow's Friday, which is Thursday. And we will leave you guys out some good vibrations. And I hope the next story does this because daycare. If you have children, 10 times I tell you, put your kids in daycare. Especially that first week and then that first day is a little rough. But it's always good that your child greets you the same way this little girl treats her daddy after her first day at daycare.
So pretty lady. Good afternoon. I caught on camera this time.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
First time we're now.
There is nothing wrong with that. That a child sees you and greets you like that. That right there is a beautiful thing. But yeah, always, like I said before, as a parent myself, I get sappy about my child. But anyway, you don't want to see grown man crowd TV like that. That being said, that's gonna do for this podcast. We thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate it. Some shameless plugging before we get out of here. With everything that's going on, guys, Netflix pricing going up, Paramount Plus high pricing going up, Hulu, Disney, every other stuff is going up. And it almost makes you wonder why you cut the cord in the first place. How about this? Would you love to be a part of something that gives you the content that never goes away? And for a good amount of time, you ever wanted to own something? Well, I got one for you. Blurred Station. Blurred Station, if you don't know about them, they are a new enterprise that's out there that has plenty of, that actually has content that you can see, that you can watch. And at $10 a month, it never goes away. Netflix can't say that. Hulu can't say that. Disney almost can't say that. But Blurred Station is definitely for those of people in color as far as music, as far as animation, comics, things of that nature. Definitely check it out at blurredstation.com. You can sign up for right now for $10 a month. And for right now, they do have a founders membership going on, which means that if you do stay a founder for 36 months, you actually get dividends back. How many people have always been said, I would love to own a piece of something that's profitable? Blurred Station's give you that ability. Definitely check them out at blurredstation.com. Also, shout out to my boy Vaughn at Big BZA Dot. You can definitely find him, Big BZA Dot, on social media and his music beats page, as he does do beats for sale. If you are interested in music, whether it's for a podcast, whether it's for a song or things of that nature, definitely check him out, Big BZA Dot, on all social media. As for myself, guys, you can find me BlackFox447 on all socials, as I do reviews on just about anything and everything. And of course, not only this podcast, but other podcasts called Give It Podcast, which can also be found there. The link at the bottom may make it a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, it'll take you to my link tree. That's the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack out here, Get Bit. Of course, I post podcasts. Definitely like, share, subscribe. Let people know. Share the word. Preach the gospel. Wow. Preach the gospel. Okay. Pretty much, guys, share it. We have the biggest thing called word of mouth, which is basically the greatest advertising tool that we do have in our disposal. So again, if you see this, like it, share it on your page, share it with your folks, share it with those that watch Fox News. I'm not against them, but we'll try to help them out the best we can. But again, guys, help me to actually grow these things out because this is something that I love to do. I love talking about. I love getting people informed. That is the biggest thing for me, to get people informed. Also, at the same time, guys, be careful with COVID and everything else out there. Protect yourselves the best way you know how, especially if you're flying. Wear a mask. It's not that freaking hard. And again, try to learn. Try to learn something. I always say, well, learn something, open your mind to something, discuss something, because that's the whole point of this show as well. Not just to give you the daily news that's going on within the U.S., but to inform you. When you're informed, we all do better if we can simply take the information from a good place and use it correctly. And at the same time, guys, I do want to see the conversations that we're actually having. The only rule that I have is keep it clean, let the facts speak for themselves. We're not out to bash anybody, but understand it is completely and utterly okay to simply agree to disagree. It is okay to do so. That being said, guys, last thing to say about how the Frack we got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information allow you to make up your own mind. But we do provide a lot of perspective that goes along with it. Do we do better as a society as we're informed? We're progressive. We mean we literally move forward by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the National Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman as the National Cybersecurity Director. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up on your paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still same old game in Congress? Most importantly, how the Frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll get through this. Vote. Peace.